So we have 4, 3, 2, 1 people coming into the webinar. And welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining this evening. My name is Elisa Scarpa. I am the topic leader of the Topic Energy&Utilities at Bocconi University alumni. I'm very happy today to host this webinar, and I will take only 3 minutes and then I will leave the floor to Pierpaolo Raimondi. And 3 minutes, in the first one, I want to thank you, our distinguished speaker today, Xavier Rousseau and Yorgo Chatzimarkakis, for joining the event and sharing with us their experience and their knowledge on hydrogen. I want to thank also Pierpaolo Raimondi for organizing for the idea of this webinar, and Andrea, who is always assisting me and assisting you in with the registration and every issue we have with the topic, and our university representative, Professor Matteo Di Castelnuovo. The second minute is just to say that I'm very delighted to have this topic, hydrogen, this evening, because today this is currently one of the biggest challenges we have, and hydrogen is joining an unprecedented movement worldwide because it's supported by different policies around the world, and many projects arising everywhere. Thus, I believe that this hour, the next hour, will be very useful for all of us. And the last minute, very, very briefly, I take is to telling you, and especially who is not familiar with our community, 2 words about the alumni, Bocconi alumni community. So let me share only a few slides with you. As you can see in these slides, our network is very large, and we have 70 global chapters and more than 200 leaders. Obviously, we are all volunteers, and Pierpaolo has been the previous leaders until last year of this topic. We are based on 3 main pillars: lifelong learning, that's why we are here today, we're sharing experience and with this aim of continuous learning; networking, obviously, which is more challenges during this period with the pandemic everywhere; and career advice. But most of all, it's important the giving, and we are all the leaders on the volunteers is moved by the idea of giving, and it's not only giving back, but it's mainly a giving forward with a forward-looking attitude. And that's why I would like to take your attention to the importance of our fundraising projects, based mainly on 3 different things: students. So we are helping with scholarship and exemption students, also with international programs, faculty and research, and then university and campus. And Andrea is putting a link in the chat, and you know that all our webinars are free of charge, but I really ask you to think about the possibility to invest in education, which probably is the best investment one can do. Not everybody can have this opportunity, and you can help giving a very small contribution using the link you will find in the chat. So I now leave the floor to Pierpaolo Raimondi, and I will take back at the end of our webinar to tell you next event. Thank you.
Elisa, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and I'm very pleased to be back on this stage, which I contributed to set up 6-7 years ago, and which has turned into a sort of catalyst for high-profile events for our community in the energy and utility space. I'm very pleased to host tonight this event, particularly with two organizations which are, in our view, two rock star organizations. They enjoy rock star status among the organizations which are sort of pushing the hydrogen agenda across Europe forward. And perhaps just by way of framing a bit this event for you, hydrogen is definitely these days one of the darlings of energy analysts. And it has been the case already a couple of times over the last 50 years. But nowadays, I think there is a general consensus that this is one of the pillars around which we'll build the energy transition. And why is that? Very briefly, for someone who is not very deep into the subject matter, hydrogen can be produced as a renewable source called green hydrogen with a process which is called electrolysis, which is basically a process whereby you break a water molecule with power into hydrogen and oxygen. And why is that important? Because we want to decarbonize, we want to make our planet more resilient, and we want to make our life safer. And Europe is at the forefront of this. The new Green Deal, which was announced by the new Commission at the end of last year, has a very strong objective, which is carbon neutrality by the year 2050, which means that, among other things, we'll have to reduce the CO2 footprint. And therefore, we have to sort of go for a mixture of renewable sources, renewable power, batteries, and something more. And this something more is probably going to be hydrogen. And so these two free sources will be just complementary to each other. The two gentlemen with me and with Elisa tonight are two absolute experts. We have, and we are very delighted to have Mr. Yorgo Chatzimarkakis, who is the Secretary General of Hydrogen Europe, which is an umbrella organization in Europe for the hydrogen and fuel cell industry with 160 companies, 25 national associations, 8 research centers as members, according to your website, Yorgo. And Yorgo is a Greek-German dual citizen, former member of Parliament, of the European Parliament, and already at those days, a very keen advocate of the hydrogen economy. So thank you very much, Yorgo, for being in attendance and to be here at our show. Let's call it our show tonight. And then we have Xavier Lorenzo Rousseau, who is the head of strategy and of market analysis at SNAM, a former McKinsey consultant and a veteran practitioner in the sustainability and decarbonization space across continents. SNAM, needless to say, is one of the largest corporates in Italy. It's the largest gas transportation company in Europe, excluding Russia, as Mr. Alvera reminds ourselves about often. And it is one of the strong sort of evangelists of the green gas economy, has made significant investment in the space, including recently by way of investing in an important electrolyzer company in the UK, and has a unique understanding of the feasibility of transporting green gases on gas transportation grids in the world. So I'm very happy to have the two gentlemen here. By way of background and by way of housekeeping, we'll leave the floor to Yorgo for 20 minutes, to Xavier for 20 minutes, and I try to moderate the last 15 minutes or so. Yorgo has to leave us at 7:25. And please keep your camera off and your microphone off across the event, so we don't see your private rooms and we disturb our speakers. So Yorgo, thanks for being here once again. The floor is yours. You are in mute.
Thanks very much. And thanks for the honor and for the invitation. I try immediately to share my screen, but something changed dramatically here, and I think it does not work. Nope, it does not really work. So I would ask you to show my presentation. It's a pity. Is that possible, Elisa? Yeah, Pier Paolo shares this. Excellent. And in the meanwhile, I can tell you that, that's excellent. In the meanwhile, I can tell you that it's true that I have been member of the European Parliament for 10 years, and I have now the pleasure, I'm married to an Italian. She was born and raised in Germany, but she's now, so to say, continuing the tradition of the family. She's member of parliament, and she's a German member of parliament, but as an Italian, she's the only Italian in the Green Group, because she belongs to the Green Group. Just to let you know that politics and energy policy is also something that takes place at home every second, I would say. Now, Hydrogen Europe, and let me introduce you a little bit to Hydrogen Europe, is the leading association, if you wish, on hydrogen technologies. If you go to the next slide, you will see the membership, and here you see that's quite numerous and quite interesting. A lot of Italian companies, and Xavier will later on explain the role of SNAM. SNAM is one of our leading companies, not only from Italy, but among our membership. And Marco Alverà is definitely one of our rock stars and superstars. And if we go now to next slide, our mission, by the way, is zero emission. Very simple. Our mission is zero emission. And if you go to the next slide, you will see the periodical system, right? If possible, to presentation mode would be good. If not, we leave it there. What you see here, this is the periodical system, which was presented by the Chemical Society last year at their 50th anniversary. This shows that the elements that we have, the 110 elements, 104 elements, they are not all abundantly available. So some of them are limited, some are threatened, and some are seriously threatened. The red ones are seriously threatened, and the little mobile phone shows you that these elements are in the mobile phone. So electricity only is a very important option, but it's far away because we have scarcity of some of the elements. Whereas,
sorry, I just stopped the sharing screen because I'm trying to use another version of the file, so that probably we can get not the problem we had before. Okay.
Ah, there we go.
Okay.
And you see that some of the elements, like carbon, but also nitrogen, oxygen, and of course hydrogen, element number 1, they are plentiful available, and that is why we need to think not only about carbon neutrality, but also about a cyclical economy. So if an economy has a cyclical element where the elements can be used again and again, that would help our planet, but also our economy to get the right shape. And that explains the rising role of hydrogen also. It's not the only explanation. Next slide shows that hydrogen is a multi-talent and can have a plentiful, next slide, can have many, many roles. So we heard already in the very beginning that hydrogen can enable large-scale renewable integration and power generation. So this is important because if we thrive for a world of renewables, we will have more and more an intermittency problem. So we need grid balancing, but we also, that's number 3 here. But we also have the need to store. And once we produce this hydrogen, then we can integrate more renewable energy, we can store and we can integrate more, and we can distribute with pipeline systems, that's the business of SNAM, the energy across regions, but also sectors, very, very cheaply. So it's extremely economical to transport hydrogen via pipeline, and pure hydrogen options are there. We are going into that direction. And then, of course, you can decarbonize also the end use. So that you see on the right-hand side in this fork. You can help to decarbonize the transportation, the industrial energy use, the building, heat and power sector, and also you can decarbonize the industrial sector that uses hydrogen as a feedstock, chemical industry, petrochemical industry, steel industry, and fertilizer industry, to mention only some of them. Next slide, please. Next slide shows, I think I go, that we are on a global race. The point, this is a title from one of the leading energy magazines in Europe, and this is from August. Who will be the hydrogen superpower? Is it the EU or China? And I have to say, as of last week, and Joe Biden's quite impressive comeback, we have a third player, because Biden definitely in his in the TV show, but not only in his campaign, mentioned that he wants to be climate neutral as of 50 also with the US. Kamala Harris said, I think 45 already. And he definitely will join this race because he is betting on renewables, and that's clear. Next slide, please. So we are in a historical situation because COVID-19 has the impact of a world war or even more. This here is a moment taken from the IEA shortly after the outbreak of the pandemic. So you see a dramatical energy drop, drop of energy demand, especially coal and oil, but also gas and nuclear. The only winner, if you call that a winner, is the renewable energy that has gone up. And that shows that it's a disruptive change. It's a systemic change. And that has been used by us. Next slide. Because we understood that in this historical situation, you need a historical approach. What we presented was a 2 × 40 gigawatt electrolyzer initiative. So 80 gigawatt of green hydrogen, renewably produced hydrogen, to be built up until 2030. We presented that in January of this year, so 10 months ago. And I remember my own board of Hydrogen Europe was skeptical. They said, no, whoa, that's maybe too much. And a few weeks later, the pandemic was there. And we got a phone call from the Vice President of the European Commission, Timmermans, saying, hey, we have now this COVID-19 issue. Would your plan be a building block for the European Green Deal despite the pandemic? That's how it all started. Next slide, please. And that's how using the disruptive change became an issue. And we ended up some months later at the historical day, 8th of July, where the European Commission presented 3 things. One is the European hydrogen strategy. And this hydrogen strategy, we are very proud, did enshrine the 2 × 40 gigawatt number, and not only that. So we could really help stakeholders but also the Commission to shape the strategy. At the same time, we saw the launch event of the so-called, you see the banner behind me, the EU Clean Hydrogen Alliance, which is basically an umbrella for the hydrogen discussion that we will have, also boosting the different investments that need to be taken. Marco Alvarado was one of the spokespersons for his roundtable at this launch event. He will play a decisive role in that. And then, of course, we had also the energy system integration package. This is the initial step for any legislation to combine the power grid with the gas grid. So to bring the energy system more together, electrons and molecules, and of course, power to gas, that's power via electrolysis to hydrogen, will play a decisive role. Next slide. We are happy to see that the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance is shaping up, and at the same time, it's member states that are driving more or less also their budgets into that direction. France and Germany alone put, not on the table yet, but they earmarked 16 billion of euro for hydrogen projects the next 10 years. The Italian figure is not announced yet, but it will be around 4 billion. So it's also quite high. Next slide shows that this is not only a thing between some member states, it has also reached now the level of, next slide, of the Council. The European Council most probably will discuss that also end of the year. German presidency has taken it very, very seriously, but I can tell you that all the processes show big interest also of many, many other countries, and Italy is one of the most important and most pressing countries. The most advanced basically is the Netherlands. The most projects are in Germany, but the most ambitious agenda, I would say definitely you can find it in Italy. Next slide, please. And this is very good because Italy will be one of the major countries of transition for hydrogen coming from Northern Africa, because the 2 times 40 is 1 time 40 in Europe, and the second 40 gigawatt will be Northern Africa and Ukraine, so the neighboring regions. So you see, we try to build up a coherent strategy. On one hand, this vision paper, then how to consume this hydrogen. I mean, it's always a difficult issue to overcome chicken and egg problems if you have a disruptive technology. In my case, I have a hydrogen car, very happy, and we have 100 hydrogen refueling stations in Germany. But guess how many cars we have? 500. So 500 cars for 100 fueling stations, that's a mismatch. That's not good. So this is where we need to overcome a misplanning. And that's what we did with this plan here. So we described the costs. The cost of building up the hydrogen society is 430 billion for the next 10 years, whereby 1/3 is public, 2/3 are private investments. In order to underpin this commitment, we have presented 110 CEOs signing up to that idea. You can see also SNAM being in the center there. Of course, Marco Alverà did sign up. And this goes hand in hand with political recommendations that we also delivered, because you need to have a legislative, regulative framework in order to push up the hydrogen economy. Next slide, please. And this is what we are working upon now. The European Clean Hydrogen Alliance is one of the main tools. Next slide, but it's not the only one. The targets that are described in the hydrogen strategy is to build up a real ecosystem, a real industry. So at the moment, we could describe some 500 companies to be in that ecosystem. For the Hydrogen Alliance, some 700 companies signed up, companies and stakeholders. We think that this will grow, that we will see some 1,000 companies until 24, so the next 4 years. And then there will be a consolidation. There will be, and we can see that already, that there will be mergers, acquisitions, and so on. The targets that have been described by the Commission for this next period are 6 gigawatt of clean hydrogen until 2024 already, and then 40 gigawatt in 2030 and another 40. So it's the 2 times 40 enshrined in that strategy. Next slide, please. And it's remarkable that they have a target for themselves. So the Commission has a target for this term, Mrs. von der Leyen's term, or Mr. Gentiloni's term. Also, the abatement of CO2 is described in clear figures, 9 million tons already in 24, 90 million tons then 6 years later. And here you see also the figures for the investment that is needed. just for the electrolyzers, 9 billion in 24 and up to 44 billion in 2030. So it's a mega industry that will be produced here, which is good. Many of the electrolyzers will be in Italy. Next slide, please. This all does not happen without a clear financial engineering. We are talking about the shift from horse to car, so disruptive systemic change. And that is why all the different elements that the EU budget that is now has been compromised on beginning of this week they need to be used in order to build up the infrastructure, the capacity, but also to support the projects. I'm not going through all of these different funds, but let's take the Just Transition Fund, very well known also in Italy, or Next Generation EU, this whole post-COVID recovery package, very, very important and to be used. Let me highlight the IPCEI, Important Project of Common European Interest. This is the tool that member states will use in order to fund up to 100% some of the projects. Next slide. And we are working together with the Commission to make this happen. So this is a historical moment that also needs a historical change of state aid rules, because, and here Mr. Gentiloni, the Italian Commissioner, will play a role next to, of course, the Vice President Vestager, the Danish Commissioner who is responsible for competition law. And we had today a meeting with her cabinet on exactly that. The good news is, yes, they are going to allow also OPEX, operational expenditure, operational costs, because so far state aid was only dealing with CAPEX. So that's investment costs. You build a new steel plant without coal, but with hydrogen replacing coal, you get CAPEX. But now we need also some operational costs over some years, not for all times, but maybe for 5 years, 7 years. And this is in discussion now. And we would not see that the Green Deal, based on the money that comes from Next Generation EU, will flourish if we don't change the state aid rules. And we are about to do that. Also, because it's all about reducing carbon, we need, of course, to have a mechanism that helps to keep a competition level for our industry using that new hydrogen-based technologies in order to keep it competitive on a global level. That's where the carbon border adjustment mechanism can help, and that's where we also are working. Next slide, please, is about, next slide, about the carbon content. That will be the new currency, if you wish. So Bill Clinton won his election a long time ago with the slogan, it's the economy stupid. Today we would say it's the carbon content stupid. This will be the decisive thing to measure via different methodologies or via one methodology. And we Europeans should be fast in setting up a system that has a clear indication how much carbon is in a product. Only by that we can at the border say, hey, your Indian steel, your Chinese steel has too much carbon. So you need to pay a toll to come into Europe. Next slide. And these are elements that we are building up now. And that is where we will end up. We will not only end up in hydrogen being produced to balance grids. No, we will see in Northern Africa, in Southern Italy, 24/7 production, hydrogen renewables. And in the case of renewable energy, it is more efficient to put the electrolyzer close to the source of the renewable energy. So here you can see an offshore electrolyzer that is built on an old oil platform, and the offshore initiative of the European Commission that will be presented in the next days will, of course, have something like this also in mind. And we are, of course, fighting for that, and we are participating there. Hydrogen renewables as a new commodity. Next slide, please. We will build then also corridors that can use the hydrogen produced in mobility. So in trucks, Iveco is working on a fuel cell truck, and Iveco is one of our members. And we are now together with Iveco, but also together with SNAM, working on the idea to dedicate pipelines that you see here in gray, to dedicate pipelines for hydrogen only and to fuel the above 10T corridors. The colored lines here are the transport corridors, so automotive routes, motorways, and the ScanMed, so Scandinavia Mediterranean, from Sicily to Sweden. This one corridor in red here, we want to make carbon-free using hydrogen, with dedicated numbers that we have calculated together with our friends from Iveco already. Next slide. And that's something we work on. What we would need is something like a Hydrogen Act. So a legislation that encompasses both infrastructural aspects as well as market incentivation. Contract for difference is one of the tools that can be used at the consumer side to level the extra costs that we have for some years for this new technology, and sort of a feed-in tariff at the production side. And we are working currently and will present in 2 weeks a first proposal for this Hydrogen Act. Next slide, please. I think it's the last slide. This is our European historical role. And I started with this race that is going on globally. We believe that Europe will become the place, the birthplace of a real market for clean hydrogen as a new commodity. Hydrogen and its derivatives, like ammonia, green ammonia, or clean ammonia, like methanol. And we believe that the marketplace and the stock exchange where the price is built, is made up, should be in Europe, possibly Rotterdam, Port of Rotterdam in the Netherlands. But the currency that should hydrogen be denominated in should be euro, not renminbi, not anything else. This concludes my presentation. Happy to have had the honor to talk to you. Again, our mission, zero emission, and I'm looking forward to the discussion with you. Thank you.
Jorgo, thank you very much. Very insightful, very inspirational. We got the message. It's a disruptive system change, the one we are confronted with. And now the floor is for Xavier to sort of take us through the perspective of SNAM as a business practitioner to the game.
So I hope you can hear me well, and you can also see the slide on the screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. So thank you very much first, I mean, for the community to invite me and have the pleasure for being one of the 2 guests here, presenting a bit of, I call it an infrastructure perspective, because at the end of the day, SNAM is an infrastructure company, and is started a bit the journey of hydrogen, I would say 2 or 3 years ago, with an initial assessment of hydrogen. We're also curious about what, I mean, hydrogen could look like for the future of the energy system. And we say, oh, look, this is big. I mean, it will change. And I fully agree with Jorgo. I mean, this will change the picture of the system in Europe and also outside Europe. So, I mean, we started to investigate a bit it. So the first question is, why now? So hydrogen, I mean, there's been some hype in the past. And why now is different than what we see in the past. And I would say at least 4 reasons are out there. One, and the first one is already mentioned before, but is the decarbonization willingness of the European community first, but also a bit globally. So there is an increase of demand, I mean, that we see in the future. There's an increase of the CO2 emissions if we are not doing anything. So if we want to change the footprint that we see today, there is a need for decarbonization, and hydrogen will have to play a role there. There is a second reason, is that technology is developing quite fast, and there is a cost reduction that we see in the production of green hydrogen in particular. This is driven by 2 factors. One is the reduction of cost of solar and cost of renewables that we've seen for the electricity system, but also for what we expect in terms of reduction from the equipment of the producing hydrogen, which are the electrolyzers. If you sum the two of those, what we'll see, as you see on the top right of the chart, is a reduction of the cost expected for producing hydrogen in the next decade. There is a fourth one, which is the, historically hydrogen was more linked only to the mobility sector. When it's in the 70s, there was the oil crisis. Hydrogen was seen as a way to substitute petroleum products for consumption in mobility. In reality, what we see is that there's a full range of application for final users, which includes mobility, of course, but it's also rails. The non-electrified rails, that we have also in Italy. The use of hydrogen as feedstock in ammonia production or refineries, but also for industrial processes, industrial uses. The last one, which I think is one of the most important one, I don't know why in the screen is full of this yellow stuff, but the last one is that there is a full ecosystem that is working on that. It's not just one player, but as Jorgo mentions, they will show the chart. It's full of logos of companies. These logos represent a full spectrum of companies active in the value chain. So as I said before, first, we look at the size of the potential and the size of the need. We did a study back in 2018, 2019, looking at Europe and what will be the mix of green gases available for the European market. And we ended up that, with a mix of green gases, so also biomethane, but also the hydrogen in the different form of hydrogen that you can have, from green hydrogen to blue hydrogen or CCS, there is a quite sizable potential of gas to be produced, decarbonized gas in Europe. And this decarbonization will have an impact also on the bills of the end users, because if you compare this scenario with green gases and the scenarios without green gases, so full electrification or limited use of gases, because actually full electrification is not even feasible, you have an annual saving of approximately 220 billion euros per year for the consumer's bill on the energy sector. So this is also a saving which is implied on the growth of hydrogen in the energy mix. One of the things that we see for hydrogen, and that's something that Jorgos mentioned before already, is that it's well integrated into the system. So hydrogen will be produced from renewable sources with a surplus of production, or even from dedicated resources. Then there is the need to use the pipeline for transporting it and the storage system to keep it for the months when you need it, and then connecting to the end users. So it's a full value chain connected to the hydrogen, starting from the renewable production, then down to the final uses. Why we see, and you see here also in the previous one, the transport. Oh, sorry, I'm going. Okay, the transport is really in the middle of this chart, because it's one of the activities and one of the business that will be impacted by the transportation of hydrogen. Why we see transport and pipelines in particular to have a role in hydrogen? Well, actually, because it's the cheapest way to move large volumes of hydrogen at the lowest cost. What you see here is a study that was done by Bloomberg New Energy Finance, where they compare the different sources of hydrogen to supply Germany. So it was mentioned before, Germany has quite an impressive objective for hydrogen consumptions in Germany, but they also are considering a lot the import of hydrogen, because they are not probably able to produce it all locally. So if you compare the different options for importing hydrogen in Germany, well, actually what you see is that transporting hydrogen from Algeria via pipeline through Italy and to Germany is the cheapest one, because the transport of pipeline is the cheapest option for transporting volumes of energy. And at the same time, you are using the best natural resources for solar, who are the one in North Africa or south of Sicily, for example. South of Italy, sorry, Sicily, for example. So there is an economic reasons why, I mean, we see the options for creating what we see here, which is a backbone of European networks. So again, this is a group of companies with Snam in the lead of the consortium, together with other European gas company. So we study what a trajectory for this backbone could look like, and we look at the different pipelines available in Europe, and started to think, okay, how the backbone of hydrogen could look like in the future, and how this could play in the next year. And we saw that, I mean, by 2030, something like 7,000 kilometers of pipeline could be installed. It could be, sorry, deployed in Europe. And actually, most of it is retrofitting of existing pipeline, not even new pipelines, going up to 23,000 of pipes in 2040. And this is what you see on the left, is the picture of the different pipes in Europe. They will have two basically separate gas transport network in the long term. One will be this one that you see here for dedicated hydrogen, and the other one is for biomethane, so the green gases that we need also for the system. This, I mean, as of course an implied investment, 30 to 60 billion. But thanks to the fact that we are using converted pipeline, this will save definitely money compared to rebuilding a new infrastructure. Again, I'm fully aligned with Yorgos. I mean, there is the let's say the Dutch hub or the North Sea hub for producing hydrogen from the North Sea, which is clearly pushed by our friends in the North Sea in terms of a way to produce hydrogen from renewables. But I mean, we have also to think about the option for Italy to be a hub in terms of hydrogen, and not just for producing hydrogen in Italy, but also to import from North Africa and to convey it to the Northern Europe. So that's one of the reason why Italy as a bridge for hydrogen could help not only the Italian needs for hydrogen, but also the one for in Europe. Let me just spend a few minutes on then Snam and the role of Snam in the process. So here, just to remember a bit, Snam, I'm not looking at the financial numbers, I'm more looking what you see on the right part of the chart. Snam is already present in different countries in Europe and outside Europe in terms of asset, and is also looking at opportunities in the energy transition, so supporting the energy transition also with different companies active in biomethane and also in energy efficiency and in hydrogen. So 3 pillars of the Snam strategy. One is, of course, the core business. So developing and keeping the core business of what we are doing in a safe manner and in terms of efficient system. Second one is the international activities that I mentioned before, and the third one is actually the pillar is the energy transition. So in particular, the hydrogen that we are speaking here. When we look at hydrogen, again, 3 pillars. We like the number 3 probably. First part is the system design. So what we are doing is really looking, as I said before, a bit on the long-term scenarios, how the grid will evolve, what are the technical standards that are required in order to the system to cope with hydrogen. There is a second leg, which is actually on the asset itself. So we are looking at our pipes, our component, our compressor units, our storage sites, if they're ready and what will take to get them ready for hydrogen. And we'll see a couple of numbers in the next page. And the last one is on the value chain development. Being at the center of the value chain for hydrogen, for Snam is important also to connect with the consumptions of hydrogen and also the production. So helping a bit what I said before, the creation of the ecosystem for hydrogen. So here, when I said asset readiness, a couple of more elements. The first one is, of course, on the testing side, we did a couple of tests for blending of hydrogen in our asset close to Contursi, close to Salerno. So we tested 5% and 10% of blended hydrogen with natural gas in Contursi. Then we are doing testing for the compressor stations. So the compressor station are the unit that push the gas in the grid. So given that we are modifying the type of gas, we need to check also the feasibility of the compressors, and we are doing analysis and testing also on the storage system. We did a first audit of our existing pipeline, so on the pipeline itself, on the steel itself, and 70% of our asset at the moment is ready for hydrogen. So on the pipes, 70% of the 34,000 kilometers of pipelines that we have in Italy are already with the steel that is required also for hydrogen. And these tests and these exercises have been quite also taken from the press and from several newspapers, because it's seen one of the first one in that sense. Last page is on some of the more recent initiatives for Snam. Again, looking at the opportunities and also looking at way to create a value chain and linking all the pieces with the Ferrovie dello Stato. The first one on the top is to find a way to get hydrogen for rail on the lines that are not electrified, that cannot be electrified, or is too expensive to electrify. So this one is an agreement that we have with Ferrovie dello Stato for that. The second one is a partnership with producers of PEM technology. PEM technology is one of the electrolyzer technology that we see here, is the UK company ITM. So this is just a couple of examples of some of the initiatives that Snam is putting in place for playing a crucial role in the hydrogen future. And I think I can stop here, and thank you all.
Thank you, Xavier. Thank you very much. I think we are now left with a few minutes to try and address some of the questions which have come through. Let me start from the last one, which came through from Filippo Rigoni. Hi, could the guest express a view on which shall be the short-term milestones, success factors to drive success of hydrogen deployment roadmap? Perhaps this is for you, Jorgo.
Yes, indeed. Thanks very much. There are some low-hanging fruits, and these are basically the industries that are using hydrogen today. So while we speak, it's the chemical industry, the petrochemical industry, so the refineries, they are using hydrogen as a feedstock in order to desulfurize the crude oil and to make it clean. It's also the steel industry that can replace coke, coal. They use it to heat up the iron ore and then to reduce oxygen from iron ore, but you can do it with hydrogen as well. So hydrogen can reduce oxygen, becomes water, whereas as coal monoxide reduces oxygen, becomes CO2. And that's where you have already industries that can use it right now. So the basic idea is to find customers, consumers of hydrogen that are there. I talked today to the CTO, not the CEO, but the CTO of the biggest chemical company in the world. That's the BASF in Ludwigshafen in Germany. And he said, I'm consuming right now 2% of the global hydrogen demand. That's quite something. I can start immediately by replacing gray hydrogen by green hydrogen. And there you go. If we are to create this commodity of clean or green hydrogen immediately, these are the customers. And what we would then do in order to also come into the logic of Snam, we would connect the industrial clusters with dedicated pipelines to create backbones. And that's where it all starts. It starts from the first consumers, the existing consumers, connecting them, and then we build up a real system like was shown by Xavier.
Just to sort of to add to that question, Jorgo, I mean, of course, it's easier to identify low-hanging fruits in the industrial sector and in the transportation sector. I mean, how do you see, I mean, stationary fuel cells as being an option going forward for, say, residential applications?
This is something that also has been tested in some countries, like in Japan. There's the ENA Field project that shows that these residential fuel cells work already. For Europe, we might need the other steps before. However, there is one issue that seems to be extremely promising. That's the data centers. Data centers are growing, not only in importance, but also in space and in consumption of electricity demand. First, cities have thrown out the data centers because they are consuming too much of electricity.
Amsterdam, yes.
Yeah, Amsterdam has done that. So what they are now doing, they are building data centers, have to go somewhere into the green field, and that's the good news for Snam. They will possibly need residential fuel cells that can work right now and today with gas, so with natural gas, but the same fuel cells can also work with hydrogen. So what we will see is that the data centers will be located at a pipeline, and the pipeline can be first retrofitted and then reconverted to pure hydrogen. The fuel cell will stay, and the electricity that is produced for the data center comes from that residential fuel cell. And that, of course, will be the starting point for also residential fuel cell use in other sectors, in the end also in private houses. But this is where we think it will all start, to support data centers. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. Perhaps one question for Xavier. There is a question which I can sort of try to interpret. Hi, everyone. Can the presenters advise what will be the measures which allow the hydrogen production investment and avoid the chicken and eggs issue, and when they will be implemented? I guess this is about the production cost of hydrogen with electrolyzers, Xavier. I mean, what is your view on that? Particularly in light of your recent investment in ITM Power, which was very interesting for me personally, a very visionary step that you have taken. So you must have a very clear view about that bit of the value chain.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly, I mean, a game of economy of scale, that you have to create there. You need to create a scale of the market. The market grows, and then you see the cost also going down. The electrolyzer were used to build, I mean, one by one in very small scale, and now, I mean, we are seeing more and more the process of producing them to become industrialized and automated and so on. So that's clearly the way to get there. So of course you need to create demand to get that capacity to be built. And of course, I mean, you need to start with the long-hanging fruits. You need to start where you will see the lowest cost for the community to pay. I mean, and this is exactly the industrial, the hard to abate sector for the industrial sectors, for the chemicals, or all those, I mean, for sure will be part of it. But also, I mean, the mobility. I mean, mobility is clearly one of the areas where there is an opportunity for hydrogen also, I mean, in the next years, because, I mean, we see, I mean, Nicolas, I mean, there are many of those who are pushing that direction, and that's where we see more and more growing options for having hydrogen. When you start with that, you will start to see clusters of consumption. You will see to have a portion of your system that will start to get hydrogen, and then you will enlarge it, taking others to get into it, some in other industrials who are maybe a bit more expensive in the conversion, but they're very close by. And then when you start to get the hydrogen down, then you have also those that will come in, and then we create, and moving out from the chicken egg problem to a situation where you have an evolution which is positive for the market. And of course, I mean, one thing that we see that is clearly important is that you need to have a market. You don't need local monopolies or small places where you produce hydrogen and you consume hydrogen, because that one will not help to create a market. You need also exchange and flows from countries to countries, like the one that we're seeing for electricity and for gas today. So that's a bit the trajectory. And I mean, we see the first steps are there and not so far from now. And I think it's important to get ready for that. Once we get scale, then we also see the cost going down. And that's what happened for solar. I mean, no one will believe that I mean, if in 2005 or 2008, I mean, the cost of solar was, I don't know, 400 euros per megawatt hour. Now it's what, less than 20. In Portugal it was 11 euros per megawatt hour. So it's, I mean, electrolyzers are similar to solar. It's, you need to produce them in large scale, and then you will see also the cost going down the same direction.
Jorgo, I will still abuse your courtesy with two final questions. One is coming from Maria Chiara. She's asking, what are the key risks? What can we do in order to mitigate any risk in the sort of deployment of this project? And secondly, very interesting questions. We have mostly heard about green hydrogen. What is your assessment of blue hydrogen? Is it really cheaper than green hydrogen? Is there a CO2 storage potential in Europe? And is it something which will stay with us for the next 20 years anyway?
Happy to answer both, but after that I will need to go to another conference. I start with this ambitious long-term vision and the short-term, so to say, steps we need to take. I think I showed during my presentation that the hydrogen strategy of the European Commission has set a very ambitious short-term target, which is 6 gigawatts until 2024. So in the next 4 years, or next 3 years basically, scale up to 6 gigawatts. We have done a compilation of our projects so far in Europe. We are at 40% of this already. So we are at 40%, and we have some time now with the projects projected, planned. And we need now to implement. We need now, and this process starts as of next year, March, to really start to find the finances, private and public, so funding and financing for these projects to kickstart them. That's what we need to do. And once we kicked off, we go. And we stay in this plan, and that's why I reiterated quite some time the importance of the state aid rules to be adapted. Now, the other question was about blue and green. You saw my logo. My logo is an H based on a blue and a green color. We have both. So in our membership, we have advocates for both. But we should not underestimate a third option, which is the pyrolysis. So this is basically cutting natural gas or methane into carbon solid and into hydrogen, which is clean. And blue is something like a transition technology. Blue would help us to decarbonize immediately using the steam reform process that we use to produce hydrogen from methane, but then to add carbon capture sequestration. And the questions are right. Are there capacities to store this carbon, the CO2 in depleted oil and gas fields? Yes, there is plenty of space over there, but there's no social acceptance for it. That's a problem. The problem is that only some societies, some countries like the Norwegian, the British, they accept this. The Germans do not accept this. And that is where we need to find the right balance, how to start immediately with decarbonization, to start to not wait until the green hydrogen is there and to use existing technologies, but at the same time to have a sunset clause, to say blue hydrogen is accepted only until, I don't know, 25, 27, 35. This is a political debate we need to start now. I have it at home every day with my green MEP at home. But this is what we need to do. And we might see a digression. We might want to avoid lock-in effects. That's why the NGOs at the moment are protesting like hell against this blue hydrogen. We are accused, I say it openly and transparently, to be fossil as Hydrogen Europe, although only 12% of our members belong to the traditional energy sector, and they invest into the green technologies. So this is where we need to mitigate the risk. We believe very much in, of course, electrolysis, but also in pyrolysis. So the pyrolysis is something which is 5 to 6 times cheaper than electrolysis. It's based on fossil, but it's clearly decarbonized because the carbon is then in a solid state. I hope that answers the question. And I would like to excuse myself now and say it was an honor. I know about the importance of Bocconi in Italy. And
I can't hear you anymore. Sorry. Are you there? Yes, we can hear you again now. So Jorgo, thank you very much. We understand you have to leave. It's a pity. We'll continue upon the next sort of opportunity, and we'll have regular events on hydrogen from now on, and so we'll disturb you in the coming years as well. And good luck with your good work.
Grazie. Ciao.
Thank you, Jorgo.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So we can sort of try to cover some of the other questions with Xavier, if you have a couple of minutes more, Xavier, or Elisa, should we think of giving us?
No, I believe that Xavier is available. We can take other 5 minutes.
5 minutes is fine. I mean, I can stay for 5 minutes. So if there's some burning question and I have the good answer, happy to take it.
I think the burning question, Xavier, is here. I mean, the competition between electrification, e-mobility, and the hydrogen economy. So this is very much a question for you, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I hear competition, then it's when I start to question it, because it's not about competition. I mean, probably was a bit fast. I mean, I was too quick in my presentation, but actually we are talking about two systems. One is the electricity system, the other one is the molecule system. And those are, I mean, already today a bit interconnected, because I mean, gas-fired power plant produce electricity, and these gas-fired power plants are supplied by gas pipelines. But in the future, there will be also the reverse of the two. So the power to gas, so producing molecules, so hydrogen from power. The two will be very, very interconnected, and will definitely play a role. The reason is, one, I mean, of course, is about the flexibility that the molecules would give to the power, because I mean, that's the power. I mean, we know, I mean, power lines needs to be stable, and the electricity needs to be dispatched on time. While I mean, molecules could be compressed, could be stored, could be stored, and so on. So that's clearly one of the advantages. The second one, and the reason is that, I mean, simply, I mean, you cannot electrify everything. I mean, there are some sectors who cannot be electrified, so cannot be converted the process into using electricity. And the other one is that there are, I mean, for sure, a need for matching supply and demand all over the year. If consumption is in winter, sun is shining more in summer, how you convert something into electricity and keep it until the winter season? You need to store it in molecules. You need to convert it. Then you can also convert to e-fuels and other options. So that's, I mean, other way to use it, for example, for aviation or for shipping. I mean, there are others you can consider, but I don't see the competition. I mean, there is a need to decarbonize 100% of the energy system. Electrification will play a role for sure. In some of the sector will have a major role, but it cannot do everything by itself.
All right, thank you. I think that's exactly the right way to put it. And now we have a last question, perhaps, if I sort of see it properly. Most of hydrogen today is used by refining ammonia, and by ammonia industries, and is mentioned as feedstock for methanol production, iron steel. These are industries which have heavy capital investment. How do you think of convincing them to use a source of energy which is not cost competitive until 2040 and spend money on top of it?
Well, I mean, those companies like refining or ammonia are using gray hydrogen today. So it's basically replacing gray hydrogen with, I mean, something who is decarbonized, so green hydrogen, or eventually blue hydrogen if you are able to capture the CO2 as emitted. So there, it's just a game of when the green hydrogen will be more will be in the money compared to gray hydrogen. And I mean, what we see, and if we see the right projection of cost, this, I mean, by the end of the decade, we'll see an option for the green hydrogen to be in the money. So these one are not even in the place to require some subsidy. Other, I mean, who are needed, I mean, then will come later on in the process. I mean, once, I mean, the hydrogen will be more cheaper, I mean, then you will have also other industry to start switching. Of course, I mean, one element which is very important to consider is that it's right. I mean, these companies are capex heavy, and then they have cycles of investment. So of course, you need to match not just the fact that green hydrogen or decarbonized hydrogen is going down in terms of cost, but also the cycles of those companies they need to invest. And by matching those two, you will have the right timing for them to switch to hydrogen.
Yes, and I just noticed there is a question about the role of digital technologies. It's an interesting one. Any thought on that one, Xavier?
Well, I mean, digital is important. I mean, for Snam, not just for hydrogen. I would say for everything, and for the way we are working today. I mean, I think that is already an answer of why digital is important. I would say it's also important for hydrogen, in particular when it comes to handle intermittent resources like for solar and for all the renewables resources. It's important to have a system that is able to cope with that type of changes. And of course, all the technologies, digital, also the data use and so on, will be needed for that system, with more complex than before, and we need those technologies to be simplified and be ready for the end user. So absolutely very important, but not just for hydrogen. I would say in general, for the way we are working and the way we are seeing.
I think I have a problem with my own connection here. Hello? So sorry, I think I have a bit of an issue here with my own connection. So I get, but I think I got your answer. So I think we won't abuse longer about your availability, Xavier. I think it's 7:41 by now. So Elisa, we can sort of call it a day by now. What do you think?
Yes, it has been impressive for me. I've learned a lot of different things, and I hope that everybody has joined this hour with these two fantastic speakers. I thank them a lot also because they allow us to register the event, and so you will have the link for the registration around in a week. And you will be able to listen again to some part of the webinar. And remember that in a few days we will launch our next event that will take place on the 3rd of December on sustainable innovation and green technologies. And so please keep an eye on our website if you don't already follow us. And I hope you will join also for this next event. And thank you very much, Pierre, for organizing and for the idea. As you mentioned, we are going to organize other events on hydrogen because we really believe it's very important for all of us to understand the development in general around the world, and so stay tuned with our events. Thank you to everybody, and have a good evening.
Have a good evening. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks, Xavier.
Thank you.
Once again.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Xavier.